But more fundamental than its role as a building block of the human brain, it has functional activity and we're going to look at that. DHA turns on BDNF, or brain-derived neurotrophic factor. That's what triggers the brain, it enhances its development. It leads to the formation of new neurons and the connection of neurons from branches that come out called dendrites. And the synapses between one neuron and the other. You know, when you're born, you have 100 billion neurons in your brain, and the connections are 100 trillion. The presence of BDNF enhances that formation. Well, here's a cover of Time magazine. Drugs of the future are going to be involved in modulating DNA. Isn't that exciting? It's science. 20, 30 years from now, we can hope to see that drugs will work on the basis of our DNA. Well, the foods that we eat have an effect upon our health and physiology by modulating how DNA expresses itself. So this has been going on for hundreds of millions of years, thank you very much. You can modulate your DNA expression right this minute, and you will do so after my lecture when you go out and have lunch. So that's not new science. Well, let's look at the Alzheimer's patient and recognize that those with the highest level of DHA have a dramatically reduced risk of Alzheimer's disease. So much that Dr. Morris, in the previous slide, showed that if you're in the highest group of DHA, your risk of having Alzheimer's was reduced by 78%. This study shows that, or a report in the journal Lipids, which means fast, a decreased level of DHA is not limited to the Alzheimer's patient, but appears to be common in all types of cognitive impairment in aging. But DHA, aside from protecting our brains as we age, plays a pivotal role in neurogenesis, the actual formation of neurons during embryonic period, and during neurogenesis, the period of time where our neurons are being formed, and even after birth. Gliogenesis, the formation of those cells in the brain that are the supportive structure, and perhaps most importantly, synaptogenesis, or the connection of one nerve to another. You can have your 100 billion nerve cells, but if they're not talking to each other because they're not connected, that's not a pretty picture. The IQ gene. Well, what is the IQ gene? I submit that the IQ gene is that gene that turns on the production of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF. Preschoolers with the highest DHA, enhanced vision, enhanced visual spatial skills, predicts better academic performance, reduced risk of depression, reduces their risk remarkably of ADHD and ADD. Now, I've been talking about Alzheimer's disease. So the question is, when do we start a program for brain health? We're now talking about preschoolers. So important is DHA in brain health that you will see in 2007 on your grocery store shelves products, foods that are enhanced with DHA. And that is beyond exciting. That is going to have a profound impact on the health of the brain health of the world. So look for it. Look for DHA in foods. I'll digress. That's the fundamental of my new book called Raise a Smart Child by Kindergarten. I wrote this book about a brain book talking about what people can do to protect brain function if you're my age or younger, or what you can do to enhance brain function if you're older and you're already failing. We started realizing, what should our next target population be? Should we talk about teenagers and adolescents? And I realized we've got to start as early as we possibly can to create the most efficient brain possible, and that brain which is most resistant to declining with things like Alzheimer's disease. Because this is our alternative. And this is what we do in America. We drug the heck out of our kids, and it's absolutely wrong. The risk of, for example, ADHD in children with higher levels of DHA is cut by 50%. This is a disease that affects 10 to 12% of our school-age children. There are over 2 million kids in this country on medication for ADHD alone. And now OCD as well, and other forms, even other forms of psychological issues. We're drugging the heck out of our children. It's been estimated that as many as 25% of American school-age children are on one form of psychotropic drug or another. And it's preventable. What do? You breastfeed your children, first of all. That reduces the risk of ADHD dramatically. And if you are breastfeeding, you increase your DHA availability by taking a DHA supplement. If a woman who's breastfeeding takes a DHA supplement, her breast milk contains 75% more DHA. That translates to 35% more DHA in the blood of the infant, the breastfed infant. DHA turns on brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is the fundamental key for brain development. It turns on the smart genes. New York Times, July 16th. That was last week. How many of you saw this? Checklist for camp. Bug spray, sunscreen, and pills. It was an amazing article that showed that about kids go to camp, 25% of them have to line up at the nurse's station once or twice a day to take drugs just to go to summer camp. Well, let's take another look at this DHA and recognize that it's a very highly unsaturated, let's see if I get that to move, probably not, highly unsaturated fat, which makes it very, very fluid. And where does it come from? DHA, we've all talked about fish oils. You always hear you should take fish oil. Maybe that's not perhaps the best idea. One brand of fish oil saying that ours is best because it's free of mercury and PCBs. Well, we've always talked for years that people should be eating fish because fish is brain food, right? You've heard that. And fish is brain food because it contains DHA. But DHA from fish extracted may not be the best choice. Well, I'm a tuna, and I'm dolphin-free, but baby, I'm loaded with methyl mercury. Making the recommendation that people should eat a lot of fish because it's good for your brain is not appropriate anymore. Because fish is now much more contaminated than it ever has been. Well, the main source in the human diet for DHA, not from a nutritional supplement, is fish, right? Women who breastfeed and women who are carrying, who are in gestation, need high levels of DHA. But what does the FDA tell women? Don't eat fish because it's full of mercury. So what should they do? They should take a pure DHA supplement. Where does it come from? This says, with all these omega-3 fatty acids, you'd think I'd feel better. So where does it come from? Well, it comes from fish oils. It also comes from microalgae. That is to say, you can now go to your health food store and buy DHA, which is vegetarian derived. It comes from a microalgae which is grown in a stainless steel tank in a laboratory. It was never in the ocean. It's never contaminated. Your best source of DHA is vegetarian microalgae derived. DHA plays a pivotal role in COX-2 inhibition, blocks the COX-2 enzyme just like NAC does. Here we see that COX-2 is upregulated. I showed you before Alzheimer's, but also Parkinson's, Lou Gehrig's disease, and many neurologic problems. If we look at COX-2 staining in the hippocampus of Alzheimer's patients, we see more COX-2 depending on how demented a person is. When a person is a level 5, well, take my word for it, level 5, totally incapacitated with Alzheimer's, they have the highest level of COX-2 enzyme in their brain, which is measured after they die. So we need to put this fire out. Physical exercise increases BDNF. We heard this morning from Dr. Garnieri from Scripps that exercise should be daily, every day. Running increases brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Women from the Nurses' Health Study who exercise have a 20% decreased risk of cognitive decline. And that's just their study. That's just 1.5 hours of exercise per week. Brain inflammation, nitric oxide. Now, nitric oxide is a very critical brain free radical. Brain inflammation is related to upregulation of the enzymes that form nitric oxide. Nitric oxide damages the brain. If you measure nitric oxide in the human brain, there's a direct relation in Alzheimer's patients compared to controls. 3-nitrotyrosine is a way of measuring nitric oxide. Dramatically elevated in the brain. Why am I focused on nitric oxide? Because NAC, N-acetylcysteine, reduces the formation of nitric oxide. Very important. Nitric oxide relates to risk of Alzheimer's and brain decline. But how did that get in here? Well, how did it get in here? How does Viagra work? Nitric oxide. Correct. It's a great ad let's take a look at this ad. Look at the angle of that pill. I love that. And I'm telling you that nitric oxide relates to risk of brain decline, right? Here's a medicine that increases nitric oxide. And what's going on here? Is it my imagination in this unretouched photo, does he have his wedding band on the right hand? She's saying he's taking Viagra, he's such a wonderful lover. And he's saying, who is this lady?